Hello and welcome to Vibrant Lives Podcast 2022 Wrap-Up. I'm Amanda Hayes, your host. I'm a lawyer who saw the light and retrained as a nutrition scientist. Thank you so much to all of you who have taken the time to listen to my podcast this year, and I hope you found some valuable advice in there. Overall, 2022 has not lived up to my optimistic expectations, but despite the disappointments, there have been some bright spots too. As I've alluded to in my podcast a number of times, my dad's become very ill and it's been heartbreaking to witness. And that's heightened for me because he's such a kind and gentle person who always put others first. I reflect back on so many things we did earlier this year, simple things like walking the dog together or going out for a coffee, and not knowing then that it would be the last time that we would be doing those things together. So for me, this reinforces how important it is to hold your loved ones dear and appreciate those daily interactions, even the mundane ones. Like nearly everyone, I got COVID. I didn't really give myself time to rest and recover properly because it was 2 weeks before I ran the 4-day Larapinta stage race, which was not ideal. And then later in the year, I became really ill with pharyngitis and bronchitis, and it took me a couple of months to really recover from that. And to top it off, I've injured my hip and I can't run for I don't know how long. Anyway, enough of being gloomy. The bright spots were the Larapinta stage race in April, which I did with my sister. The course is set in Northern Territory along the spectacular and rugged Western MacDonnell Ranges. I found running in that ancient landscape elating. It's my all-time favourite race and I'd really like to tackle it again. Both times I've done it, I've come fourth in my age group and I am keen to better that. The other very bright spot was an overseas trip to Paris, Iceland and Scotland with my husband. Overall, I recorded 25 episodes this year, 20 of which were expert interviews and 3 were 5-minute food fact episodes. This is 9 fewer episodes than last year, and I think this is mainly because I was sidetracked by life events and by illness. The top 5 episodes in terms of downloads were in 5th place, Jerry Doyle. Jerry is a successful civil engineer who spoke really candidly about living with chronic depression, including some of the deep lows he's experienced and the strategies that he uses to manage it. In equal 4th, we have Harry Glorikian and Steph Noon. Life coach Steph Noon and I discuss positive psychology and how your strengths and talents can be harnessed to enhance your happiness and well-being. Harry Glorikian enlightened us about the potential applications of AI, that's artificial intelligence, and technological innovations in the health space. So for example, personalised nutrition based on your genome is something that we can look forward to in the future. In 3rd place, and this one surprised me a little bit, was my 5-minute food fact podcast about eggs. So eggs have been variously maligned and hailed as a superfood, so I guess people wanted some clarity on that. So in a nutshell, eggs are an excellent source of protein. They also have vitamins A and D, minerals zinc and selenium, antioxidants, choline and omega-3, and many other beneficial nutrients. So for most of us, they are a great addition to our diet. The second most popular episode was my interview with Nathan Bolton, and I'm not at all surprised by that. Nathan is a former Special Forces soldier who completed 2 tours in Afghanistan where, amongst other unimaginable things to most of us, he defused landmines. Post-Afghanistan, Nathan suffered from PTSD and major depression. So he shared his extraordinary story and his road to recovery. And these days, with his brother, he's founded Bolton Brothers, a psychology practice that is dedicated to men's mental health and well-being. And the most popular episode was my discussion with dermatologist Emma Ryan. This was my most popular episode by a long way. It had almost 7,000 listens, which is huge for me because the average for most of my episodes is in the hundreds. So clearly we care about how to look after teen skin, including treating acne, and how to care for our skin as we age. The podcast I had to do the most background work for was with Harry Glorikian because I know next to nothing about AI. I read his book, The Future You: How Artificial Intelligence Can Help You Get Healthier, Stress Less, and Live Longer. It was a fascinating book, actually, and it was written for people like me whose mind boggles at the mere mention of AI. The podcast that moved me the most was the one with Nathan Bolton. When he spoke of his experiences in Afghanistan and with PTSD, it was really clear, sitting opposite him, that it took courage and that he had to really steel himself to talk about those things. He's these days doing impactful work, helping men build resilience and advocating for their mental health. So something really positive has come out of his experiences. And now a few notes about some of the things that I learnt from my guests. In the Eat Well themed podcast, as you know, nutrition is an interesting, or at least I think so, and constantly evolving area of science. And as I often mention, it can be confusing. The aim of my Eat Well podcast is to seek out and learn from experts about nutrition and diet and keep you up to date with some of the science of nutrition. Clinical nutritionist Celeste Ferraris, Olympian, discussed some of her research into the links between food and mood, and in particular, her current research into the association between liking salty food and depression, stress, and anxiety, which is really interesting. Who would have thought? Scientific researcher Christy DiGiacomo helped us understand how converting our food waste, so for example, waste from supermarkets via insects, into fodder for animals, helps create a sustainable food source and is also an example of a circular economy. And now on my Move Well themed podcast, if you're looking for some New Year's inspiration to get yourself moving, then these podcasts are on point. Yoga instructor Veronique Ori shared the magic of movement and mindfulness through yoga and how to extend the practice from your mat into your daily life. I really loved my discussion with her. It was so upbeat and positive. Girls and women, I've got you covered. On the topic of menstruation, Dr. Catherine Grellman helped us understand the menstrual cycle and what's happening to your hormones during the cycle. Robin McLean, founder of Hello Period, explained how her period products, that's cups and discs, allow girls and women to manage their periods sustainably and comfortably and to reduce the environmental waste from the plastic-heavy sanitary products industry. Dr. Grellman also gave us some useful tips on how to choose the most appropriate exercise bra, and physiotherapist Beck Sabine made us realise how important it is to look after our pelvic floor muscles, how we can do that, and some of the issues we might face if we don't. If you're one for vigorous exercise, my guest, former Ironman champion Sarah Gross, talks about competing at a high level and also her current work empowering women in sport. 2022 was the year that we hoped to put the pandemic behind us, but for most of us it didn't turn out that way. Plus, the global news cycle was incredibly depressing, to put it mildly, featuring the human toll of Russia's invasion of the Ukraine, numerous floods in Australia, and our ongoing environmental destruction of our beautiful planet. With so many distressing events, both global and local, perhaps I was unconsciously searching for meaning myself, and this reflected in the number of podcast episodes I dedicated to mental well-being. Psychotherapist Marie Rowland discussed the other pandemic of stress and loneliness and how to build our emotional immunity to help cope with that. I think this is a good companion episode for the one earlier in the year with life coach Steph Noon about positive psychology. In a similar vein, oncologist turned executive and personal coach Dr. Tabitha Healy helps people identify what matters in their lives and sets them on a path to achieving it. This was also another popular episode. Organisational expert Sandra Lane shared her tips on decluttering. For many of us, organising our personal space, like our homes for example, leads to other positive lifestyle changes such as becoming more productive or more motivated to exercise. 2 episodes that were of particular interest to parents of teens were my episode on skin with Dr. Emma Ryan, as I've mentioned, and the effects of the #Fitspo social media trend on body image with health psychologist Dr. Ivanka Pritchard. Some positive news regarding the move towards eliminating bowel cancer was shared with us by biomedical scientist Dr. Susan Woods, whose lab here in Adelaide is doing groundbreaking research in this space. And of course, Nick Lee, OAM, founder of the Jodie Lee Foundation, dedicated to the early detection of bowel cancer because, if caught early, the prognosis is excellent. I always feel energised by speaking with my knowledgeable and generous guests. I'm overwhelmingly grateful to all my podcast guests who have not only shared their stories and expertise, but have trusted me to publish them. However, it is you, my listeners, that transform my interviews sent out into the ether into a podcast when you tune in, so thank you. You can find all the Vibrant Lives podcast episodes on my website at vibrantlivespodcast.com. So that's the wrap. Thank you all so much for your support. The best and easiest way to support Vibrant Lives podcast is to share it with your friends and give it a good rating on Apple Podcasts. I always appreciate that. I'll be back in February 2023 with a really inspiring lineup, including a guest who coaches and helps people to deal with past trauma, one who will help us identify and overcome grey area drinking, and another who is a mental health and disability advocate, plus a queer rights activist and founder of a digital magazine devoted to mental health and inspiration. I look forward to connecting with you then, and in the meantime, I wish you all a happy and safe festive season. Eat well, move well, think well, live vibrantly.